Hello, this is a support video to help you with your learning of 8C respiration. So, what is respiration? Respiration is a chemical reaction which occurs in all living cells, releasing energy from glucose. So, the cells need to be living, it doesn't happen in dead cells, and it doesn't happen in things that aren't made up of cells. Now, it's an energy transfer. It's releasing energy which is stored in a glucose molecule for the cell to be able to use to do work. Now, there are two different types of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic respiration needs oxygen to occur. So it needs to happen in a cell where there is oxygen in order for the reaction to occur. Now, aerobic respiration is good because it releases more energy. It releases that energy slowly. That happens in a part of the cell called the mitochondria. And you should have met this in your studies already in year 7. The mitochondria is labelled here on the cell here towards the bottom. These look kind of pink things. Now, they're not pink in real life. That's just a kind of cartoony type diagram to show you what they look like. But that's where aerobic respiration happens in the cell. Now, its waste products are carbon dioxide and water. So energy is released, but the actual waste products are carbon dioxide and water. Now, the other type of respiration is anaerobic respiration. This happens without oxygen. So when there's no oxygen present, in order for the cell to keep producing energy, for it to be able to do the things that it needs, the cell will carry out anaerobic respiration. Now, the disadvantage is that it releases less energy, but it does release that energy more quickly when the cell is in desperate need of it. Now, it happens in the cytoplasm, so it doesn't happen in the same place in the cell, and it doesn't produce the same waste product either. It produces lactic acid as its waste product. So to have a little bit of a look at these in more detail, this here is the word equation for aerobic respiration. Now, I've very deliberately at the top of this slide written it down as the word summary, because actually aerobic respiration happens in many, many little steps. And this word equation here is a summary of those steps. It's just the kind of headlines, if you will, of what happens. As you go on to study science a little bit more, particularly A level will tell you more about the little steps that are happening to make this overall reaction happen. Now, one of the things that respiration does for our bodies, which is really important, is it releases some energy as heat, so as thermal energy, and that helps to keep our bodies warm. But you can see here the reactants are oxygen and glucose. It's aerobic respiration, so oxygen needs to be present. So the reactants are oxygen and glucose, and the products are carbon dioxide and water. Now, it's not the carbon dioxide and water that we're after, or that the cell is after as part of this reaction. It's the energy that's released as a part of this process. Now, if we compare that to the word summary of anaerobic respiration, which is here, you can see it's a much simpler reaction from glucose to lactic acid. So the reactant is glucose, the product is lactic acid. But again, it's the energy that the cell is after. Now, it says above here, during strenuous exercise, oxygen is used up faster than it's replaced. Now, when that happens, anaerobic respiration happens. It doesn't need oxygen. It can release energy more quickly. Now, if you want to experience the effects of anaerobic respiration, you can pause this video now and you can sit there and start to clench your fist. So if you clench your fist and then open your hand and then clench your fist and open your hand, and you do it over and over and over again, you'll start to get to a position where the muscles in your hand have used up the oxygen faster than it's being replaced. And you'll build up lactic acid in your hand, and you'll feel the effects of that lactic acid in your hand. So I've got some key terms here. 3 of them are about respiration, but 2 of them are about different things. And the reason that I've popped them on is because the most common exam questions actually ask you to compare either the 2 types of respiration or compare respiration to 2 other key science terms, 2 other key science processes that students often confuse. So we've got respiration here is a chemical reaction which occurs in every one of the cells in the human body, and they need to be living cells. It releases energy stored in glucose. Without it, the cells would die. We've talked about that one already. Aerobic respiration, a chemical reaction which releases the energy stored in glucose in the presence of oxygen. We've also talked about anaerobic respiration, a chemical reaction which releases the energy stored in glucose in the absence of oxygen. But what about these other two key terms here? So we've got combustion. Combustion is another name for burning. In a combustion reaction, fuel is burned and reacts with oxygen to release energy. Now, it's easy to see from that definition why students can confuse combustion and respiration. Both of the reactions release energy, but they don't release energy in the same way. Combustion releases energy very quickly when compared to respiration. It does release some of the energy as heat or thermal energy, but some of the energy is released as light as well. The other difference is that combustion, the fuel could be glucose, but actually there's many different materials that can be used as the fuel for combustion, whereas it needs to be glucose the very large majority of the time for respiration to occur. Now, the other process that students confuse with respiration is breathing. Now, breathing is also called ventilation, and that's the word for the movement of gases into and out of the lungs. And there'll be a revision video to support you in reviewing that process, but that is different from respiration. Breathing helps you to absorb oxygen into your body, which is needed for respiration to occur, or needed for aerobic respiration to occur. It's also needed to get rid of carbon dioxide, which is the waste product from aerobic respiration. But it is not the same, and it is not part of the reaction. So what I'd like you to do next is I'd like you to have a go at answering 3 key questions. Here's the first of them. What is the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration? Pause the video and spend a few minutes making a list of differences between the two processes. Okay, so once you've had a go at answering that question, here are the answers. So, aerobic respiration uses oxygen, anaerobic respiration does not. That is a key difference. Aerobic respiration makes carbon dioxide and water. Anaerobic respiration makes lactic acid. More energy is produced by aerobic respiration compared to anaerobic, and that energy is released more slowly. The final difference is the location in the cell of the two reactions. Aerobic respiration happens in the mitochondria, anaerobic respiration happens in the cytoplasm. Okay, time for another question. Go back to, scroll the video back if you need to do, to the definitions of the key words if you need to do for help. But if not, have a go at this question. What is the difference between combustion and respiration? Again, pause the video, get yourself a piece of paper and a pen, and spend a few minutes answering that question. So, what is the difference between combustion and respiration? Here are a few things. Now, first of all, aerobic respiration happens in living cells. Combustion does not happen inside cells. Okay? Now, another key difference is that energy is released slowly in respiration. It's released much faster in combustion. In combustion, different materials can be used as the fuel, whereas in respiration, it is nearly always glucose. In combustion, some of the energy is transferred by light. That never happens in respiration. Respiration will never release energy in the form of light. And lastly, in combustion, energy is released quickly, which we said earlier that it was released slowly in respiration, or more slowly in respiration. Time for your final question. What's the difference between respiration and breathing? Pause the video and spend 3 minutes answering that question in as much detail as you can. Okay, what is the difference between respiration and breathing? Number one, breathing is inhalation and exhalation of air. Not all living things breathe, but all living things will respire. To give you an example, if you're sitting there thinking what sort of living things don't breathe, well, bacteria, for example, they're living things. They don't have lungs, they're single celled organisms. They don't breathe, but they still respire. Breathing is how gases enter and leave organisms with lungs, whereas aerobic respiration is a chemical process to release energy. And as I said earlier, all living things respire. Now, if you've done really well on those questions, that's fantastic. If not, you might want to scroll the video back a little bit and make some notes about those to help you with any of the assessments that you have. Thanks very much.